Alright, in class we talked about this unit, this multi-track or 4-track recorder, and how it needed a new connector on its power supply. Here's the power supply, here is the cables coming off of the power supply. Now this particular unit uses an unusual power connector. You don't see this one too often, but it's a 6-pin DIN connector right there, and that looks like this. This was like $4 online, $4 or $5 to get yourself another connector. So I'm going to attach that to these 3 wires. Now you notice that of course I only have 3 wires and then I've got 6 pins. Okay, well how do I know which wire is supposed to go to which pin? Well, you may or may not have been in the class that we discussed this, but if you take it apart, you're able to see where here's your power connector right here, and then you've got these. I found these 3 traces on the inside here. I'm going to see if I can get it to show on the camera. The top one there, that's your ground, and I know that because I use my digital multimeter to confirm that this is directly connected to the sleeve of the RCA connectors, which is a ground, and it's also was connected to pin 1 of my XLR connectors, which you guys should know is a ground. And then the other 2 are for power. Since both of these other wires are exactly the same as far as like what voltage they are, the brown is supposed to be used for my ground, and then the blue and the green are both 11.5 volts AC. Again, kind of an uncommon voltage for a power supply for a piece of equipment. So since they're the same, I can swap them to either one of those. So all I have to do is stick a little piece of metal, like a resistor leg or a piece of solder or whatever, into each one of these pins. Or actually, now that I've got the connector, I can actually put the connector in there just like that, and then figure out this way where each of those is connected to. So I'm going to go ahead and do that for you right now. So I've got my digital multimeter. We are going to set this to continuity, and we're going to probe on the ground here. I could probe on the ground here on this trace, this little piece of wire that I suspect is ground, or I can just probe right on like something I know is ground, like the sleeve of this, say, RCA connector that's over here. So I'm going to figure out which one of these pins is ground that way. Okay, not this one, not this one. Oh, that bottom one in the middle is ground. That'll be easy to remember. The next one over from that is ground. And that's not ground, and that's not ground. Okay. Then as far as... So I'm going to go ahead and make the one at the bottom and the middle ground. Then this power rail right here, where should that be connected to? Well, is it this one? Okay, so the first pin that I tried is connected to this power rail. And I'm also reading a 0 ohm connection between the second pin and that first power rail. So I can really pick either one of those 2 pins and be fine. I don't have to wire it to both, but because they're already connected together on the circuit board somewhere. So, and then for the second power rail, that is connected to the center pin of the 6 pins. Okay, so hopefully you guys remember that step number 1 for putting connectors onto cables is to put the back on first, right? Because if I go and I solder all this on there, I'm not going to be able to put this on afterwards, so you got to start with this. So let's do that first. Right up there like that, okay? Now, I have decided I'm just going to go ahead and use the device itself to help me solder on this connector. So the plug there is going to help hold that in place. So I have to figure out how much, what do I want the length to be on this brown and green and blue wires here. How long should this be? Because if you look at the connector, I want these tabs to bite down onto this rubber jacket. So that would be kind of like going there. So, and then this piece of the connector here actually fits right in where those holes are, where those grooves are. So let's trim this back to where these wires end right about where those holes are. All right, that's about right there. I am going to go ahead and strip and tin all three of these. I'm just going to take about 1/4 of an inch off of each of those. So let's tin those. Well, actually, you know what? I'm not going to tin them yet, and I'll tell you why. Because I want these wires to fit right inside these little holes for these pins. And if I add any width at all, even with a little bit of solder, they're not going to fit in those little holes. So I am just going to put that in there real. And squeeze all the wires as close and compact as I can make them. And stick them in there. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and solder that down. I got a bug. Go away, bug. Alright, I heat up the wire, I heat up the pin, I apply solder. Not too much. These pins are pretty close together. It'd be real easy to short them out. So there we go. Got my brown wire attached to the pin that I wanted it to be attached to. Let's see if we can't get the other two. Now, if I have to, I don't want to, but if I have to, I'll trim some of the fibers so it'll fit easier. Okay. Alright, I got it in. There's a couple fibers that didn't make it into the hole, but I got the majority of them, so I'm going to call that good enough. And we're going to solder that in, and then we're going to trim the wires that didn't make it. Just cut them off and throw them away, because we can't let them just hang out inside the connector, because they'll cause shorts. Alright, so let's get the iron and the solder. Clean the tip of my iron so it's nice and shiny. We're going to apply heat. We're going to apply solder. We're going to fuse the pin and the wire together. Release. I'm going to call that good enough. This is really my first time working on this connector, but I've worked on similar connectors before, but not this connector. So the first time's never quite perfect, but this will be adequate. I'm sure it'll work great. Okay, clean the tip of my iron. Sorry for bumping the camera. There we go. And I'm going to apply heat, and I'm going to apply solder. Fuse the two together. Release. Let's see. So I do have a couple little fibers hanging out off to the side here. Those are gotta go. And there is a couple little fibers on that center pin. Those have gotta go. cannot have any extraneous metal on the inside of my connector. That is a electronics party foul. So I now put this, which has 2 grooves on it, and line that up with these 2 bumps, bumpity bump, and that should plug together just like that. And the other side has 1 big bump, and this has 1 big slot, so that should go like that. I'm going to use some needle nose pliers to get this piece of metal to bite onto the outer jacket like I was talking about a minute ago. Just like that. Holds on there nice and firmly. The back has this little hole here, and I think it's just on the one side. Where's that supposed to go? I think that's supposed to go over the top of this. So let's line those up. Over. Keep going. You're so close. You know what? Sometimes you just learn by doing. And you know what I learned about this connector? I learned that this is the correct back for the male connector. This one that I put on here actually goes for the female connector. And the reason that's important is because you see how thick this is with this plastic you see how thick this is with the black plastic and that metal ring? That doesn't fit in there. So, since the only difference between this and this is the fact that this is like a 1/4 inch longer, 1/2 inch longer, I am just going to trim off that last bit of plastic there and it should fit fine. Ta-da! Doesn't look too bad, right? A Dremel is a wonderful thing, kids. Alright, so check it out. That actually fits. Just like that. Fancy. Okay, I'm gonna reconnect the top of this mixer recorder and make all the connections, and then we'll plug this in and try to power it up, see what happens. Alright, you guys ready for the moment of truth? I'm going to take our power supply connector. It's already plugged into the wall over there. I'm going to plug it into our mixer. And then I'm going to flip the switch. And it'll either work and light up like a happy little machine, or it'll not, and I will cry. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Hey, I got lights. I heard the tape motors engage. I think it might work. I need to go through everything, test it, see what works, what doesn't, and so on and so forth. But it looks like I did a pretty good job of figuring out where power was supposed to go. We'll take it from here. Alright, so I've gone through it and I've checked all the channels. It seems to be playing and recording just fine. And this is, I hit it with a little bit of Lysol and paper towels and a toothbrush and got it all cleaned up, and I've checked every channel. So clearly you can see signal passing there. And so this is all working and good to go. Alright.